Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Fall 24 fiction preview at Candlewick Press. My name is Stephanie Pando, and I'm part of the publicity department here. I'm really happy to be among all of our bookish friends again this afternoon, which is very new for us. I'd also like to introduce my wonderful colleague who will be joining us for tonight's preview.
Hi, I'm Sophie. I'm also part of the marketing department at Candlewick, and I'm so excited to be here with everyone.
We're really excited to be able to give you a sneak peek of our newest fiction titles for Fall 24, which published between September and December 2024. We're very lucky because we have a wonderful panel of YA authors this afternoon, and our other special guest in leading this conversation is Christine Ballo, who is the co-owner and director of programs for Loyalty Bookstores. Unfortunately, Frey Nicole Wolf will not be able to join us for the preview, but you'll be hearing more about her newest book shortly. If you find it useful, you can follow along in the Edelweiss catalog with all the titles we'll be talking about with the link that was just dropped into the chat box. You can also request digital ARCs through Edelweiss at any time during the preview by clicking the request bar on the right-hand side. At the end of the event tonight, there will be a link that will pop up onto your screen to request physical ARCs as well. There's also a Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen, so feel free to submit any specific questions for our speakers through that Q&A box below, and we'll try to answer as many as possible during the panel. We have closed captioning available, and it should already be running at the bottom of your screens, which you can toggle on and off with the closed captioning button. It's an automated feature as we improve accessibility for our previews. If you're having technical difficulties, not to worry, the video will be on demand following the event for all registered attendees, and there will be a virtual goodie bag with all the links mentioned, including the request form for physical ARCs. Before diving in, we just have a few things we want to let you know as housekeeping details.
So first, we are active on social media, so be sure to follow us on our Candlewick Press Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube. And please tag us if you're posting during this preview using the hashtag Candlewick Preview. We would love to hear what you all are most excited about. Next, are you a bookish influencer and want to keep up to date on special events like these previews, be added to our publicity outreach for new titles, and be sent ARCs to review? If yes, you can fill out our book influencer and reviewer form to be considered for the program. You can use the QR code that's right here on the screen, or there will also be a link in the virtual goodie bag that will pop up at the end of this event. Next, we also highly encourage you to tune into our Black Creator Series, which is in its third season. In this educator-focused series highlighting the work of Black authors and illustrators, Dr. Sonia Cherry Paul, bestselling author, founder of Red Clay Educators, and co-founder of the Institute for Racial Equity and Literacy, leads discussions with children's book creators about their work and the powerful ways their books can live in classrooms. For a full schedule and more information as to how to participate in these conversations, you can go to blackcreatorseries.candlewick.com.
Last but not least, we want to make sure that no matter where you are, you can find some of our authors appearing virtually and in person at various festivals, conferences, and bookstores, with more to be added in the coming months. You can check out each of the festival or bookstore's website for more information. And now on to our fall 2024 titles. With multiple starred reviews, Carly Sorosiak has established herself as a go-to author for warm-hearted stories of animal adventure, from Cosmo, a doggy-dancing golden retriever, to Clementine, an adorable lab mouse itching for escape. An equally adorable fox is the star of her newest book, Shadow Fox. With echoes of classic animal stories like Stuart Little and Pax, this light fantasy follows Shadow the Fox on a journey across the landscape of the Great Lakes region as she searches for a missing friend and encounters an island of people who need help only she can provide. Can a fox really rescue humans? Can a fox really be the chosen one? Find out in Shadow Fox. Cousins Owen, Vivian, and Amy are finally allowed to camp for one night on their own during a big family outing. But when a massive earthquake blocks the return path, there's only one way home, the long way around. The path takes them through the wilderness filled with fierce animals, raging rivers, unstable weather, and high passes. But some of the hardest challenges they face are their fears and anxieties they've been holding on to. Will their personal traumas hurt them from getting back home, or will they persevere? This gripping contemporary novel from celebrated author Anne Nesbitt is bursting with excitement and characters who will have the readers rooting for them all the way home.
Next, from National Book Award winner Pete Hopman, explores a friendship like no other and the universal truth that dogs make life better, especially for underdogs. Main character Evan is struggling to fit in, and just when nothing seems to be going right, a border collie begins following him around. This story, told in alternating viewpoints, shows readers that sometimes a dog really can change your life. New York Times bestselling author Barry Lyga really says it best, though. Once again, Pete Hopman has proven that we readers are mere putty in his hands, and that in fewer than 200 pages, he can shape us into joy, grief, bemusement, fear, and delight. Don't miss this new deeply satisfying story that is perfect for animal lovers. Next, we have Bringing Back KK. This gripping middle grade thriller is a true page turner. Used to living in her brother KK's shadow, Lena is delighted when he goes away to camp and she finally becomes the golden child. However, guilt, fear, and remorse sets in when her brother's train home from camp arrives, and he is not on it. After being rebuffed by the police and her parents, who insist KK isn't missing and is simply a runaway, she goes out to find him, collecting clues and steadily unearthing her brother's secrets, as her determination to bring him home leads to a startling discovery. Maybe KK isn't the golden child she always thought he was? While this is a book about sibling bonds, it is also about expectations, who must live up to them, who gets excused for meeting them, and what the price of holding back the truth can really be. And in Fran Nicole Wolf's follow-up to Never Trust a Gemini, main character Kat has enough drama on her plate to overshadow Shakespeare's Juliet. Life should be easy for Kat now that she's dating Morgan Delaney, but Kat didn't see their feuding friend groups coming. Accidentally landing the lead role in her school's production of Romeo and Juliet, a cold shoulder treatment from her best friend, and plenty of other hilarious antics, and Kat's story really becomes a comedy of error that even she can't fully blame on her Virgo moon. This queer romantic comedy is a delightful follow-up to Freya's debut and is definitely not to be missed.
National Book Award finalist and Prince Honor book Gather by Ken Cadow follows a resourceful Vermont teenager Ian along with his dog Gather as he struggles to hold on to his family home while his mother recovers from addiction. Booklist Star Review called this arguably one of the finest novels of the year, and I have to agree. The rich and powerful novel Spindle and Dagger follows Elen, who must live a lie in order to survive among the medieval Welsh warband that killed her family. Spindle and Dagger is a perfect blend of literary voice, meaningful character study, and riveting plot, as well as a moving portrait of women's relationships and their strength in a male-dominated society. Not long ago, Chaz Hayden was a debut author on our list, and his first book, The First Thing About You, will be available in paperback, timed with the release of his second novel, which you'll hear about shortly. The First Thing About You is about 15-year-old Harris, who has spinal muscular atrophy. He's determined to reinvent himself at a new school, and this hilarious coming-of-age novel is sure to appeal to fans of character-driven contemporary YA books like the ones by John Green, Rainbow Rowell, and Adam Silvera. And finally, in this stunning sequel to Maggie Takuta Hall's best-selling YA debut, The Siren, the Song, and the Spy picks up where we left off. Resistance to the Empire's long shadow continues. The young allies are readying themselves, cloaked in secrets and hoping to find their chance for a definitive strike. But trust and truth are hard to come by in this complex world of mermaids, spies, warriors, and aristocrats.
Now, some more middle grade paperbacks. Inspired by his relationship with his own dog, who sadly passed away, Elf Dog and Owlhead is M.T. Anderson's pandemic novel that honors the beloved pets who can transform our own loneliness. Featuring stunning black and white illustrations from Junyi Wu, this Newbery Honor book is both timely and timeless. Eli Brown's middle grade debut, Oddity, creates new American mythology by presenting an alternate world that is a telling mirror of our own. Set in the unified states where the Louisiana Purchase never happened, magical oddities take center stage as war with France is imminent. In Maria Treehan's novel, The View from the Very Best House in Town, it is part thriller, part friendship story, and the titular house is one of the narrators and brings a funny, unique, and very memorable perspective to this contemporary look at friendships and differences and how they play out in a town where the rich and exceptional attend an elite yet problematic school. In The Rat Queen, master storyteller Pete Hoffman also has a new and paperback title on our Fall 24 list. Emotionally complex and subtly sinister, The Rat Queen is a non-traditional coming-of-age story that doubles as a modern-day fairy tale. Hoffman draws on magical realism to explore what it means to develop a moral compass and the slippery nature of conscience. And finally, in V is for Victorine, female friendship takes a front seat in this big-hearted middle-grade adventure, told from the point of view of orphaned heiress in hiding, Victorine Berryman, who readers may remember from Daring Darlene, Queen of the Screen. This sequel is perfect for budding film buffs, and this historical novel takes readers behind the scenes of the early days of Hollywood movie making.
And in case you missed it, you're in luck. These spring titles are about to be released in the coming weeks. From the UK Children's Laureate comes a spellbinding YA novel in verse, The Boy Lost in the Maze, blending the ancient myth of Theseus and the Minotaur with the quest of a modern-day teen in search for his father. In a vicious and delicious contemporary novel inspired by Shakespeare's Richard III, the acclaimed author of The Family Fortuna lifts the curtain high on a high school thespian who will stop at nothing to land the lead in Made Glorious. A series of earthquakes exposes the fault lines in a teenager's unconventional life in a powerful crossover novel that explores raw emotion with wit and warmth in Eddie Eddie. And finally, revered teacher, librarian, and story ambassador John Shu explores anorexia and the self-expression as an act of survival in a wrenching and transformative novel in verse, Louder Than Hunger. While this book has dozens of blurbs by lauded kidlit voices, I think Catherine Applegate says it best. Every so often, a book comes along that is so brave and necessary, it extends a lifeline when it's needed most. This is one of those books. I'd now like to introduce our moderator for this afternoon's panel. Christine Ballo is the co-owner and director of loyalty programs for Loyalty Bookstores in Washington, D.C. and Silver Spring, Maryland. She is a 2022 Publishers Weekly Star Watch honoree, graduate of Bernard College, and most importantly, won the award for most books read in 6th grade. Christine is a fiction juror for the 2024 Kirkus Prize and currently serves on the DEI committee for the American Booksellers Association. As a biracial Filipina who is queer and disabled, Christine is passionate about championing marginalized authors both at Loyalty and on her Bookstagram account, Reading is Magical. Please welcome Christine.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. I am so excited to be back here. Moderating the Candlewick panels is one of my favorite things, so thank you for having me back. So first, I'd like to introduce our author, Nadine Panette, who is the daughter of Haitian exiles from the Duvalier dictatorship. She created her own interdisciplinary major at Harvard, yes, and then continued on to Oxford on a Rhodes Scholarship. Nadine also has an MFA in fiction and poetry and holds a PhD from Indiana University. You are so amazing, oh my gosh. Nadine Panette has dual American and Canadian citizenship, but currently lives in Belgium with her husband, 2 cats, and a dog. And next up, we have the author, Chaz Hayden, who is the author of the YA novel, The First Thing About You, and Diet Soda Club coming up. Through his writing and his YouTube channel, Chaz speaks with abundant positivity and encourages people to be different, leave a trail. He grew up in New Jersey and now lives in Pennsylvania, where he highlights accessibility in his community and spends too much time thinking about his next tattoo, same, and what concerts to attend. Chaz is also a director at Ballers and Bookworms, a nonprofit that supports underserved student athletes. And for today, last but certainly not least, Jay Anderson Coates is the author of fantasy and historical fiction for children and young adults, including Spinder and Dagger. Jay Anderson Coates lives and works as a librarian near Seattle. Welcome, welcome, Jillian, Nadine, Chaz. How are y'all doing today?
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Fabulous.
Doing well, thank you. Yeah.
Yay. All right, I'm just going to jump in. So first of all, this is the fall preview, right? So for a lot of people here today, it's likely going to be their first time hearing about your book. So I'd love if you could all tell us a little bit about your book in your own words. Chaz, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much. So Diet Soda Club follows 17-year-old Reed Beckett, who has a 10-year-old sister named Beatrice, who has spinal muscular atrophy, the same disability that I have. And I wanted to write a book that showed the sibling dynamic where one sibling has a disability and the other doesn't. But what if they come from a household where they don't receive the support that they should? And what if they're faced with so many challenges that are left just up to their own adolescent minds to figure out? And that's really what Diet Soda Club is about: resiliency, love, and what it means to have friendship in your life.
My heart grew a lot bigger to make a lot of room for Reed and Beatrice. I love them so much.
Thank you.
Just had to say. Nadine, would you like to tell us about your book?
That sounds like a great book, Chaz. I always have trouble trying to condense my book, but
there's a lot. There's so much in it.
And actually the cover tells a little bit what it is, by Tony Chambers. It's about a 15-year-old named Lucille, and when her best friend goes missing, and that is the sketch of her best friend, Fifina, she has to make her way through a lot of dangerous situations, and uses her dreams and her prescient dreams, actually, and her connection to the natural world, and finds allies in people, unlikely allies in people like Zora Neale Hurston, to help her, and eventually comes to know her own power.
Thank you. Jillian, can we hear a little bit about your book?
You bet. So my book is The Loss of the Burying Ground, and it is set in a made-up world where there are these two countries that have been at war for a really long time, like at least a generation. And finally, they've decided that there's going to be peace and there's going to be a treaty. But the problem is that neither side trusts the other. And so the only way that they're willing to sign this treaty is if it happens on a ship at sea in neutral waters, and each delegation brings their family along. So that way there aren't going to be any shenanigans. But a big storm comes up, sinks the ship, and these two girls, one from each side of the conflict, are washed up on this island together. And so now they have to find a way to work together, even though each of them has been told all of these terrible things about the other ones from the time they're very young. And also there are pirates.
Awesome. Thank you. So Jillian, I have a note with lots of exclamations in the manuscript I read for Lost of the Burying Ground was great opening with like 5 exclamations. I love how the book starts off. There's like quite a few twists and turns that like I did not see coming. You know, just the direction of the story and the characters like choices was surprising and fun to go for the ride. Did you know how you wanted to start the book? Did you know how things would end? Did it change as you were writing? Or to be succinct, plotter versus pantser?
So that's a great question. I think the most telling thing about this book is that I never really sort of intended to write it exactly. I started it was, in January of 2021, everything felt kind of very bleak and unpleasant in so many different ways. And I sort of had this moment where I'm like, I'm just going to write something fun. Just what's fun? And it was January. So I'm like, what's warm? Like pirates and castaways and, the tropics and all of that. That's fun. Let's do that. And so I sort of sat down with this blank page, and then out came Cora's voice, this very brassy, sort of poppy voice of this character. And just sort of having her talk to me for a few pages, it sort of like spun the world out. I kind of started to learn these things about the world. And after I started thinking about it a little bit, I kind of knew a little bit about how the book was going to end and certain things through the middle. But I'm very much a discovery draft writer where I have to kind of write the story to know what it's about. And so things changed a lot through the middle. And but I always kind of had this vague idea of the end. But Cora's voice right from the beginning was it stayed the same pretty much through all of the different drafts.
She has such a strong voice, like throughout the whole book. I love Cora. Nadine, Chaz, if you'd like to chime in, are you a plotter or pantser, combination?
No, I cannot outline to save my life if I try to. Yeah, I'm a Jillian. You have to just start writing it. Another thing I realized too is I have a hard time drafting a novel if I don't know what every character's name is going into it. Like I can't just like give them blank names and go back. Like a name assigns a personality and therefore drives the story. So yeah, very much just off the brim of my seat and just trying to figure out as I go along, which is kind of fun because then it's like I'm discovering the story myself as I'm writing it.
I love that.
Yeah, that's exactly, the same way that I write. I can't outline. I wish I could plot, but the way I do it is I just sort of follow my characters, and sometimes things happen with what I thought were secondary characters, and a lot more happens, and they develop and grow. And the way I wrote this is my first novel, is just a lot of trial and error. I mean, I really tried lots of different ways, and it ended up being a novel, you know, a verse novel, but it didn't start that way. So it started very dense with thick descriptions and long pages of description. And I was boring myself with descriptions. So I just decided I want to get to the emotion and the heart of it. And I started writing it as poetry. So yeah, but
That was
after
actually, yeah, that was actually one of my questions for you because um yeah, the novel in verse works so well with the story and with Lucille, and it just like the poetry and lyricism of the book, like it's just beautiful. And I was curious if it always was gonna be novel in verse, but no.
No, no,
Huh.
it started as an MFA thesis, and actually it reached Auntie Kat was my thesis advisor, and she was very kind to
Wow.
read it because I look back on it now and it feels unreadable. I mean, it was just not working, and I couldn't figure out why. So I put it aside for several years. I did other kinds of writing, nonfiction writing, 2 books. And then I returned to it after someone said, why don't you try reading novels in verse? And I just fell in love with the form because it's a form that is a vessel for very difficult emotions. And it can hold a lot more, for me at least, than the traditional novel can.
And it gives space for the reader to
Exactly. And it's
feel.
inviting the reader in as opposed to setting up, like I think of it as a house with an open door and a very, you know, light-filled space to invite the reader in, and that it's not cluttered and that you feel your imagination is working too as you read it, and that you want to read it in one go, which I know that's hard to do, but I'd love for people to read it in one go.
I love that. So Chaz, in your acknowledgments, you mentioned like through all the iterations of your book, and you teased a few that I'd love for you to talk about a little bit. But it was always Reed and Beatrice at the heart of the story. Um, okay, one, did you always know it was going to be Reed and Beatrice since you talked about having the names, or did they have different names before? And then can you tell us a little bit about some of the other versions and how did you ultimately decide this was the right way to tell their story?
So I knew, but anytime I sit down to write, I'm always like, what do I want to say next? You know, what do I want to say to the world next? So I felt like in my debut, The First Thing About You, we have a sibling relationship where one's disabled and one's not. But I didn't have enough space and time to really dive deep into that dynamic. I think we understood that Harris, the main character, and his brother Ollie, they very much love and support each other. But then I was like, what if I just designate, or an entire story to that sort of sibling relationship? But what if I flip it on its head, where they come from a family that doesn't give them the love and support that they need in order to thrive, really. So it was always Reed. In the original iterations that I mentioned, it was not Beatrice. He had a brother named Charlie, that was around Beatrice's age. But when I started to go through it, I liked the idea of Reed having a sister, because that adds a lot more challenges that you'll see throughout the story of like Reed needing to bathe her, give her a bath. And he starts to think about like, is this appropriate for me to do? Like, I'm 17, I'm almost 18, she's a child. Like, yes, she's my sister, but like at some point, when is this going to be not appropriate? Like, when am I going to have to find someone else to do that? How does like Beatrice feel when I have to get her dressed in the morning? And I felt like that those kind of like thoughts would not exist if it was a brother and a brother. So that was the reason why I switched over to a brother and a sister. But yeah, I mean, those original ideas was always reading Beatrice trying to overcome something, or reading Charlie, whatever it was. But then I was like, it was so much noise around them, like so many, like maybe 5 to 10 other characters. But then also the interesting part is Helena was also in those iterations as well.
Oh,
So I thought to
really?
myself, who really are the driving voices of the story? And it was Reed, it was Beatrice, and it was Helena. And I loved the way that they interacted with each other in those first, let's say, 50 to 100 pages of the first drafts I wrote. And I said, let's remove all the other noise and figure out what is driving Reed and Beatrice to do what they're doing. And that's
Mm.
kind of how I got the Diet Soda Club.
I love that. Yeah, I I love Helena. And I thought you handled that really well with you know, the caregiver and like the questions he's asking himself
Yeah,
and I thought it was handled very well.
thank
Well
you.
done, all of you. Yay. Um all right. So okay. Nadine, on your website, you had said my research was a deep sea adventure to discover unexpected treasures. And that just really stuck out with me. Like, again, for anyone who is going to read When the Mapu Sings, like that just gives you a little peek at some of the poetry that you'll be able to read. So can you tell it, like, what kind of research did you do for the book? What was the research process like? Was there anything that like either, you know, whether it made it in the book or not, something that really nourished your soul through the
That's
research
great. That's a great
process?
question. And let me start with the end first. What really nourished my soul were two things that I had no idea would be that important. And one was the research into trees, which I just went off on a side track and completely dived into, do trees talk, the network of, fungus that helps trees communicate, what a mother tree is. All of a sudden, I found myself fascinated by trees and also our connection to trees and why it's been so ancient, and also what trees can teach us. So that didn't really, some of it makes it into the novel, but I had to leave a lot of that aside because it wouldn't be the same book. And the second thing that really nurtured me was knowing and understanding that in the 1930s, a period that a lot of people may not know, was right after the occupation of Haiti by US Marines. And it was a very brutal occupation. But after that, so the novel starts after that, a group of women were starting a movement to help change Haitian society. And they were crossing class lines to do so. They were trying to get more girls educated. They were really ahead of their time in what they were trying to do. And they had their own magazine. There were some who were writing books about Haitian anthropology, the Haitian Creole language, all of this. And most people don't know that this was happening this early on. And to see that it was happening was very inspiring to me because I personally didn't even know it. And I thought I knew some history, and I was amazed by how much they were doing. So those two things were very, very
I love
nourished.
that. Yeah, I felt like I learned so much reading the book, but like, you know, in a way that felt very organic to the
Oh,
story.
good. Because I didn't
Um,
want to teach a history lesson. So,
no, it doesn't feel like that,
okay.
at least to me. But speaking of trees, I actually ended up asking this question at the last Candlewick panel with Kekla Magoon and Kate DiCamillo, and it sparked just really lovely, surprising answers. So I'm gonna present this question to all three of you as well. What is your favorite tree? Whoever would like to go first.
I love dogwood trees. And I actually plant one in front of every house I've lived in. I just love how the flowers bloom. So I just think they're beautiful. Yeah.
I love
I
dogwood
know there
trees
is a
too.
story. Like I'll be honest, I'm not a very religious person, but there is the legend of the dogwood and what the kind of flowers represent. And I just think it kind of has a legacy behind it, and I think it's really interesting.
I'm not familiar with that, but I will
Yeah.
check it out.
This might be a little basic, but I like an oak. I really love the way oak trees sort of weave through a lot of folklore in a lot of different places. And I love the way the bark feels. I love the way the leaves are. I love the acorns exist. So I would have to say I love an oak.
Yay. That's not
Um,
basic. That's a great answer.
I'm not going to say the Mapu because I want you to see what happens in the novel because it plays a very important role. But it is an important tree in Haitian culture. But the tree that is one of my favorites is the bristlecone pine. And the reason for that is that it can grow in a lot of really different and difficult circumstances. And like the more challenged it is, the more it grows, and it can be, I think, thousands of years old. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, maybe there are some that are 2,000, 3,000 years old, and it can have very little light. It can have, rain lashing at it. It can really go through everything, but somehow manages to keep growing and growing.
Thank you. Ah, yay. I feel like I know you all a little bit better now. Uh, um, so Jillian, in your book, there's just like the world building is so fabulous because like it feels like, oh yeah, this is what's happening. There's this like, long time war between these two countries, and like I just loved how detailed it was, but also like not in an overwhelming way. Like from the like class, the wilderness class that Cora takes, and like the details in like Vivian's backstory, and there's just like so much going on, and I thought the world building was fabulous. So I was wondering if you could just like speak on that a little bit about like how did you come up with some of this backstory and the world and like the political intrigue,
Certainly, yeah. So my academic training is in history. And so a lot of the times when I'm creating these worlds that, yeah, sorry.
Sorry, hold on. What's your cat's name?
Her name is Annabelle. And
Annabelle.
yeah,
Aw.
so a lot of the time when I'm trying to think about a secondary world that's based on one of ours, it's sort of something that I find is a good base to build on to sort of think about, okay, so what countries have historically had these kind of antagonistic relationships that feel really intractable? And so I feel like that's where I start, but then I always try to create each world and have it stand on its own. Um, so with the political intrigue, it's usually like, what's the most bananas thing I can think of that a real place has done, and then sort of dial that up to 11. I'm being upstaged right now, and I'm fully aware of this. Um, so, but I feel like with world building, one of the things that I think is the most interesting is whatever I think I'm inventing and making up that I think is just so beyond what anything would happen here in our, complicated shared human past. Sometimes I'll make it up and then find out that it's already happened. So an example of that is the tidal cages that are set in the harbor of the capital of the country that has more of a maritime culture, where there are these cages that are in the harbor. And so when the tide comes in, people kind of are put there and then they drown very slowly, or they're baked by the sun. I thought I'd made
It
that
was
up, but
very
apparently
grim.
apparently not. As I
Oh.
looked into other different things, that was something that really happened. So um, I do feel like it's a lot of it's a combination between a little bit of research and then just a little bit of how to almost like personalize it, like adapt it, and try to think about like, what if a culture is focused on shipbuilding and maritime enterprises, like what would they think is the worst possible thing that could happen to you, and how their worldview involves, the sea being almost like a character itself, you know, being able to think and decide things. And then to have a culture that's completely thinks that that's like superstitious and wrong. And to try to think about how does that dynamic work between different cultures and not tie them too closely to ones that exist now so that readers can approach them without, you know, hopefully without a lot of baggage.
Yeah. Thank you. Oh no, I just lost my train of thought. I was gonna ask you all something. Oh, okay. If you guys were stranded on a deserted island, you could have like 1, 2, 3 things tops. What would you want with you? I can go first while you're thinking because I know I would need a lifetime supply of chapstick. I know that's not like practical, but I cannot survive without chapstick mentally.
I would just want something to play music. But like any music from any year forever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like I guess Spotify. I would
Mm,
want Spotify.
yeah. Great answer.
Think following up on that, it can be anything and you can make it up. I'd like something where I could watch movies, any movie from any time, because I do love movies.
I think
Also
for me, I want the
fabulous.
replicator from Star Trek so that I don't have to eat coconuts. And, you know, I mean, coconuts are lovely, but I think you would want some variety in your diet. And yeah, I would like the replicator.
Yeah, I love that. Amazing, amazing. Um, so Chaz, you mentioned music. So I'm someone who like when I'm reading a book, if there's music mentioned in the book, I'll always put on my Spotify or a record or something and have it playing to kind of complement my reading experience. Um, for y'all, if your book was turned into a movie or TV adaptation, do you have an idea of like what kind of score or soundtrack that you think would accompany the story? Like, you know?
Yeah, music for me is a huge inspiration. It's like something I do when I'm having writer's block. I'll just listen to music and just kind of get into the mode again. But I actually made a soundtrack, a playlist for the first thing about you, So you can check that out on Spotify if you search the
Amazing.
first thing about you. And I tried to listen to it in order. I put it in order of the songs to kind of not only soundtrack that novel, but kind of the character development and story if you just were to listen to the music. And I plan on doing the same thing for Diet Soda Club. But if there was one song that for Diet Soda Club, the soundtrack, there is a song by the band called The Maine, Maine spelled like the state, Maine, and the song is called Diet Soda Society. And it's a song I've known for about 10 years now. Was somewhat of an inspiration behind the story, but it's really, if you listen to the lyrics, you get a really good idea of what's in store if you read Diet Soda Club.
Nice.
I
Nadine,
think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Joanne. Oh, I was just gonna ask either of you.
Nadine, would you like to go?
Nope, you can go. I'm still thinking.
Okay, fair enough. Well, first of all, it would be delightful to have a screen presentation of the burying ground. But the first thing I thought about when you were talking about the music was the TV show Black Sails. The music for that show was really kind of had a vibe that I really, really liked. I liked the show, but the music was amazing. The person's name was Bear McCreary. I guess he does music for a lot of TV shows,
Yeah.
but boy, that first initial crank of the hurdy-gurdy and this wonderful sort of, you know, piratey kind of sea shanty flavored music. It just that's who I want to do it, and that's the vibe.
That's great. Bear McCreary, yeah, he does he did the music for Outlander, which is so beautiful, and then Battlestar Galactica too, which is a uh great music. Anyway, love that. Great choice.
I think I was trying to think of her name. I would love to have Layla McCullough from the
Mhm.
Carolina Chocolate Drops, formerly, who is Haitian American, playing the acoustic guitar and singing Merci Bon Dieu, which is a traditional Haitian song, and it means thank you, God. And Lati Bonito, which is a song about the sun refusing to rise because it's too sick. And she just plays it. You can listen to her on YouTube, in such a way that it's very gentle, but very full of emotion. And that would be kind of, her voice would be definitely in the soundtrack.
I love that. All right. All right. I'm manifesting it, putting it out there. We're gonna get adaptations so we can have the music, see it on the screen. Let's make it happen. Yes. So just to change gears a little. Oh, and then also for the audience, we will have time for questions. If you have any questions for our authors, please go ahead and drop them in. Just a little FYI. So tell me about your reader origin story? Did you grow up being a big reader? What are some of the books or authors that inspired you to become a writer, like made you even think that that was, yeah, something you would want to do?
I'll go first. I was a big reader growing up. I really cannot remember a time when, my parents weren't reading to me, I wasn't reading to me. My mother worked in a library. She was in the college library, but, she really loved libraries. And so, she would take my brother and me whenever we wanted. She said we could have whatever we wanted as long as we were willing to carry it out ourselves. I can also remember loving the little Babysitters Club paperbacks, all those fun little cheap paperbacks of the 80s and 90s. But I think that the one author I can point to that really made me want to be a writer myself was a writer for adults named Sharon K. Penman. And she wrote these giant doorstop books set in the Middle Ages. And they were definitely for adults. There was lots of content there that I maybe could not have been reading at 12. But the thing that really stuck with me about those books was she managed to keep characters sort of located in their time in history, thinking the things that they would have thought and doing the things they would have did. And they weren't just modern people in costumes, but yet they felt very relatable. They had these same sort of feelings and thoughts about, what was important to them, like they wanted their kids to do well. They wanted to, have a safe and happy life. They wanted a lot of the same things that we want. And they really kind of gave me an idea about what was possible to do with a character in the past to both make them relatable, but also to have them be of their time and place in an effective way.
Yeah, I was reading V.C. Andrews when I was like 12, which definitely not appropriate.
Well, appropriate, I feel like,
Or
is,
not,
yeah, for me at least, it was like, my parents really didn't care what I was reading. But I think appropriate was for me, if I wasn't going to read it, I would have put it down and read something else. I was that
Right.
kid who was okay with it, but every book is different. Every reader is different.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I guess appropriate's not quite the right word, but
Your point is taken.
looking back, I'm like,
yeah, I was 12 and reading Clan of the Cave Bear. That I think other parents would have made different choices.
right. Chaz, Nadine, what about you? What's your reader origin story?
Yeah, mine starts with my mom, to be honest. My reading journey personally was very up and down as a child. But my mom absorbed novels like they were food. I mean, not joking, she would read 5 or 6 of them a month, maybe more, just kind of go through them. And then if me or my brother had to read something for school, she would read with us, whether she read it to us after dinner, or she read it on her own so that we had a place to discuss away from the classroom, which I thought was amazing. And I think I recommend that to everyone to read what your children are reading, not because you're trying to filter it or anything, but because then you can have really educated discussions with your kids like they're adults. So then I had teachers, like my 7th grade language arts teacher. I mean, we read some bangers that year, like The Giver, The Westing Game, Outsiders, and like that year I totally fell in love with storytelling. But I wasn't like the type of kid that was like, I want to be an author when I grow up. But I think when I got older, into my late teens, early 20s, I realized that I loved connecting with people and I loved sharing stories and I loved the idea of communicating. And I felt like there maybe wasn't a particular author that inspired me, but there were definitely books along the way that I think did. And I think what fully inspired me was the idea of using novels as a medium to communicate and to share experiences and to hopefully have other people relate to what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that because my reading started in French because I was in Quebec. And it was a series of books called Je veux lire, which is I want to read. So it was kind of like a Quebec version of Charlie Brown. And I was always looking for books that had characters like me or like my family, and I couldn't find any. So when we moved to the US, I would go to the public library, and there was a librarian who introduced me to Maya Angelou. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, to Sula, Toni Morrison, Jamaica Kincaid. At the Bottom of the River was one of the books that I loved. And so I finally had the experience of reading books with Black women at the center and from their perspective. But that took a while. So my reading before that was more, reading whatever was assigned in school, but always searching for something that would speak to me and speak to my heart. And librarians, they are golden.
Yes.
They did that.
Absolutely. Cheers to the librarians. Y'all are doing amazing work. We love you. We see you. Thank you. All right. I have so many more questions. Can we just grab some tea and put our jammies on and just have a sleepover?
Yeah, after this. Yeah.
Right?
I'm here for it.
It's
I
about
love
that
it.
time of year. So
Yes. Okay. I'm gonna jump into a couple of the audience questions, and then hopefully I'll have time for maybe one more of my questions. So very important. What is the cat's name again, if you can repeat it? And then did the cat help with writing the book?
Her name is Annabelle, and help, well, she is she's an accidental Bengal. So we adopted her during lockdown where we couldn't visit a shelter in person to see her. We just got videos from the kitten foster mother. Look at this. We thought it was a normal tabby. And we got her home and realized that she was part Bengal. So she is into everything. She is the smartest person in any room. And so I'll be up here working and I'll hear something go thud, or I'll hear the sound of claws going up a screen. So help is a strong word, but she's a delight and we love her.
I love it, Annabelle. Thank you. So for all of you, how involved were you in the cover design process? A little bit, a lot. Can you share a little bit about the process with us? Who would like to go first?
Yeah, cover design is an interesting process as an author. Um, I like to be really involved, but also like the artists to have their freedom to kind of envision how they think it should be portrayed. But I also think it's really important for the author too to kind of have their touch. Like the cover is the first thing people see. And as much as we don't want to say we judge a book by a cover, like we seriously do, right? So like the cover on a shelf or in the library, in a store, when you see it, it's giving you that vibe, it's giving you the mood. And it's like, what type of feeling do you want to set before anybody even opens it and reads a single word? So I think it's really important. And for myself, when artists send comps, which are like the drafts of what the covers are, and they're very rough, it's sometimes hard to be like, whoa, where is this thing headed? You know, because it's like a lot of just random like clip art images and like very bad font designs. But yeah, you kind of have to be like, I like this, I don't like this, or maybe you get 3 or 4 comps and you're like, I hate all of them, which I've done for both of my novels now. And you have to just have that communication openly, but also productively, you know, with the artist and with the publisher and with your editor. And I've been super fortunate with my editor, and with Candlewick, that they've allowed me to be a part of that process.
Yeah,
Yay,
I feel.
Candlewick.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I feel the same way, especially about being a part of that process, because I had an issue with the cover, the first version of it. And it was something that was really important to me, and it had to do with the skin tone of the character, because colorism is a very important theme in the novel. So I wanted her skin tone to be darker to reflect that. And, my editor, everyone was really responsive, and I felt like I was really being heard. And I know that that isn't necessarily true at all publishers. So I'm very grateful and happy about that.
Yeah, that's great to hear that you were supported in that, because
Very much.
it's a big thing. And for for Black teens and girls and women, like seeing that representation, and like I'm Filipino, and colorism is like a big thing in Filipino culture as well. So I definitely like understand that
Around the
importance.
world, it is.
Yeah, I mean everywhere, but yeah. Jillian, how is the cover design process for you?
This is the Burying Ground will be number 8 for me. My
Wow.
second one with Candlewick, and I've always had really good luck with covers and cover designers. One thing that I've really kind of learned over the course of all of the books is that as a words person, sometimes I have an idea about what might be good and cool, but art people are amazing who sort of see the world very, very differently than I do. And I do feel like a lot of time, not every time, obviously, but a lot of times, if they get a little bit of information about the book, what they come up with is really not something I would ever dream up, but it's really evocative. It's really interesting. And I am happy to do like fine tuning and things, but um, I kind of like to let the art people do what they do, because very often it's a nice surprise. But I do agree with Nadine that sometimes you do need to do suggestions and say, hey, can we do X instead of Y? And it's always really great because usually the artists are like, sure, can do, here you go. And then it's just it's a wonderful collaboration, and it's always, not always, so far it's been really great.
Yeah. Okay, I think we have time for one more audience question, then I will sneak one last one in as well before we wrap up. So what are you reading right now? And or what are you looking forward to reading next? I just read a bunch of really amazing YA books that are coming out this fall. When the Mafu Sings, The Loss of the Burying Ground, Diet Soda Club, just a little, FYI.
I'm looking forward to reading your books. Honestly, the descriptions and what you've said. What I'm reading right now is, or what I've started is Kwame Alexander's The Door of No Return. So it's a verse novel, a historical verse novel, and it's very, very visceral, very beautiful. And his writing, I mean, I'm immediately captured and taken into another world. And I like books that can do that, can
Yeah.
eat me up like that.
I have to agree. I am looking forward to reading all of y'all's books that, when I got the list of people who were going to be on the panel with me, I kind of internet stalked each of you a little bit, and I was kind of a little intimidated because all of you are so talented and accomplished, and it was, it sounded really, exciting to read. So I'm looking forward to fall where I can read them. What I'm reading now is a memoir, an adoption memoir by Susan Kyo Ito about her adoption, and it's really very moving. It's also very readable. It's obviously extremely full of emotion, but it's not like a super depressing story either. It's really very good.
I'm the worst person to ask this to. Mostly because I'm always writing, and when I'm writing, I don't read that much. But as a throwback, I just picked up some John Corey Whaley, like Where Things Come Back and Noggin. I haven't read those yet out of his 3, so I'm excited to jump into those.
Wait,
Thank
can I
you.
just say you wrote 8 novels, and I mean, to me, that's amazing. So
Yeah.
That is amazing.
yeah, well
Yeah.
done, because I
Thank you.
think after
You all
writing.
will get there one day. You will join me.
I don't know about that.
No, you all belong here and you all have absolutely brilliant books. And you don't know me that well yet. I am very generous with my compliments, but I mean every single one of them. I do not give compliments if I don't believe it. So just so you know, I genuinely loved each of your books and I'm so excited for everyone to get the chance to read them. So my last question, before we wrap up, books have brought so much joy, comfort into my life when I have chronic pain. So like when I feel like my world's getting small, books help me feel more expansive. And I'm just curious, what's something, whether it's big, small, what's something that's bringing you joy or comfort in your life right now that you are comfortable sharing with us?
Can I start with that? First of all,
Absolutely.
I connect with what you said because I have chronic pain as well. And I absolutely know the narrowing feeling. And what brings me comfort is some sort of connection to the natural world. If I can see a tree, a flower, something, and be close to or in contact with it, I find a lot of comfort in that.
So I'm a University of Arizona alumni, and we just won our first round in the tournament, the March Madness tournament. So as long as the team keeps winning and moving on the tournament, I'll have some joy and comfort. Yeah.
I love that. My little brother went there too.
Oh, no way.
Yeah,
Oh,
bear
tell him bear
down.
down. Tell him bear
Yeah.
down.
I think for me right now on my dining room table, I have tomato seedlings that have been growing since about February and some basil. And in another couple of weeks, it's going to be warm enough outside for me to take them out to the garden and put them in the ground. And then they will continue to provide joy all summer when they make tomatoes. So I'm excited for my garden and for it to be spring.
I love that. What a wonderful way to wrap up. Thank you all so much. Genuinely, like what a great conversation and insight. And for everyone in the audience, everyone who watches the recording later, you are in for an absolute treat. And I will say Freya couldn't make it, but her books are an absolute delight as well. So I can't wait for everyone to get to experience your books. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I'm also very upset that we couldn't keep going. So
I know.
well, unfortunately, this concludes our fall 24 fiction preview. We hope everybody enjoyed it as much as we did. I definitely did. I want to thank our amazing guest authors, our wonderful moderator, my colleague Sophie, who presented with me, and Petra, who is running things behind the scenes. Thank you so much. You can request your physical or digital arcs of all of the titles mentioned below and our authors from our digital goodie bag with the request form and other information with a link that's just going to be dropped into the chat box as I say that. Thank you. So thank everybody for joining us. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe and goodbye for now. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.